Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Union or Bust. You got Organizing Monster here with Chris Lopez.
How's everyone doing? I'm Chris Lopez, your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms, and we do have some special guests today. We have actor Zeke Alton, and we also have organizer Demetri Belardinelli. And anyway, Zeke, I'm going to start with you. So you are an actor, and I was on, doing some research, and you're everywhere. You are. I was watching. I was on Callisto Protocol. I go, I've not seen
Ah,
that movie, so I'm like watching this, and I'm thinking it's a movie, and it's not. It's a video game, and that's how real video games are getting. Like it's almost like you're watching movies. So anyway, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, as you said, I am an actor. I work um, across almost all of the contracts in entertainment that SAG-AFTRA covers. I work on camera, film, and television. I work in voiceover, and a lot of people don't know that voiceover has many genres within it. I work in video games, I work in animation, I work in commercials, I have done audiobooks, I work in radio imaging, television promo, dubbing, looping. The list goes on and on. That has led me to dive in and fully understand all of those different contracts because they are different union contracts that cover all that stuff. Um, I will say that traditionally the vast majority of my work has been video games. So the Callisto Protocol is a very plot-driven, sort of story-based video game. It's like space survival horror, and it is what we call one-to-one performance capture. So it is actually my face and body in the game as the character. Um, I'm also sort of have been in the past a mainstay in AAA, so I'm a utility. I'm not the lead character for most of the games, but you end up beating me up through most of Spider-Man 2, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart, and throughout the Call of Duty series. So that's me in a nutshell, at least
Wow.
as a performer.
Wow, and it was funny. I saw you on a commercial with LeBron James, a tequila commercial. It was pretty cool, you know.
Yes.
And I haven't had a drink in 15 years. It actually made me want to drink again. So anyway, thank you.
I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's
No, no,
my goal is my goal is to get him the drink. So,
I need new friends.
I,
All right, let's get let's get on over to Demetri Belardinelli, organizer for SAG-AFTRA. Demetri, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a member organizer, so not on staff, but I'm rank and file. I've been organizing with SAG-AFTRA for a couple years now. I have my hand in many different pots. A lot of what I'm working on is member to member organizing within our union, getting as many of our workers talking and uh, sharing ideas, knowledge, strategy, not just within our union, but within Hollywood generally. So I'm talking right now with a bunch of folks from IATSE, ununionized labor like the Production Assistants United. Um, I predominantly work the commercial contract. So that's the world that I know. And I'm also I serve on two committees, the LA Local Organizing Committee and the Commercial Performers Committee, which we are gearing up for a big contract fight ahead. So yeah, that's me.
nice. How long have you guys been on strike already? The game workers strike.
So the video game workers went on strike on July 25th. So it's been a very short strike so far. I think we were a little bit overshadowed by the 6 month strike of TV theatrical last year. As I said earlier, SAG-AFTRA splits its work by genre. So the big collective bargaining agreement that we have is TV and film. That's the one that was struck last year. But we also have separate agreements for commercials, interactive, which is video games, audiobooks, animation, looping, dubbing, all those kind of things. And like Dimitri said, we had the battle in TV film. We're having the battle in video games right now. The very next one that comes across is commercials. So we'll be doing this again. And if the employers have not learned that we demand protections and will settle for nothing less, then we'll find ourselves in the same position sometime in the spring with
You know,
commercials.
our podcast is dedicated to kitchen table economics. We always say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And tell us a little about, for the workers that are on strike. What are the main issues? I've heard AI and
That's actually the easy part. So it's been almost 2 years of negotiation on the interactive contract.
Mm.
Um, and there were a lot of issues when we started, and there are still a lot of issues that are sort of punted to another negotiation, if you will. What we're striking over, though, is the same thing that we struck over in TV theatrical and the same thing that the writer struck over, and that is the rampant and abusive use of artificial intelligence to displace the performer set without consent and compensation. To be very clear, we are not trying to shut Pandora's box or say that AI is bad and no one can use it. But what we are saying is when companies use it, they should be transparent. They should tell us that they are using our likeness in voice, face, or movement in order to make money. We should be able to consent to how it's used, and we should get paid for it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like I watch Black Mirror. You guys ever watch that show, Black Mirror, on Netflix? And there's an episode on there. I forgot who the actress was, but it was basically how like Netflix or these producers, they will use your looks and just create content out of it. They didn't even know that that was gonna happen, and that's like very futuristic and like I can't believe that we're watching a show out of this. All of us watching it are like, that's fucked up, and it actually is happening, right? They use that's what the first strike was about. A lot was AI and using their image, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, well,
that's what this is.
hilariously, that episode, the Salma Hayek episode,
Salma
came
Hayek,
out
yeah.
in the middle of the strike as Netflix's CEO and all of their lawyers were across the table telling us, we don't know what we would use this for in the future. We really have no idea. We don't intend to take advantage of actors. And then that episode came out. And it was like, well, see what you just made? That's what we're afraid of. And what you have offered us across the table allows you to do that. And that's why the answer is no.
I think, Juan and I talk about AI and if labor is having the right conversation about it. We talk about how, technology advances and things are going faster, things are getting easier to do. And I know that AI, a lot of companies get grants to do research on AI and everything. And so we talk about, okay, well, if the job is easier to do, then let's start talking about a 32-hour work week. Let's start talking about more overtime. Let's start talking about these issues. Say, oh, you don't have to do this anymore. Great. We should have overtime after 32 hours of work, or we should. So what do you think? Because AI for, our unions and AIs for different unions, it functions differently. What do you think? I'd like to know maybe the nuances and what you're looking at with AI.
Zeke, take that.
So broadly, our stance is, again, we're not trying to ban it, but these tools are tools that, when put in the hands of creators, lead to efficiency. It takes 3 to 5 years to make a AAA video game. And a lot of that is just churning and grinding. And these tools can allow a lot of those processes to be simpler and faster. And so you can make a better game faster if you put it in the hands of the developer, the QA tester, the creative community, and the performers. What we're seeing from the lawyers and the C-suites up top is, nah, we'd rather just use the tool to wipe out that entire group of people, and then we'll just have one person create game. And as long as it is what they call the minimum viable product, the MVP, and people are willing to pay for it, that maximizes our revenue. Because the people at the top of these companies, we've seen it in entertainment and across the board, certainly film and television and video games, is that these companies are no longer run by creatives. Walt Disney is not run by Walt Disney. Warner Brothers is not run by the Warner Brothers. They are run by capitalist sort of profiteers who come in and are beholden to shareholders, and their sole job is to make the most money with the least amount of expense. And so that natural tug of war between really good quality art and cost is all the way on cost now. And it's not about art. It's about whatever costs the least that makes the most money. And unfortunately, that sort of hollows out and makes for really shitty content and art, which is why they call it content now instead of movies and TVs and things like that. It's just making content. Um, so yeah,
Demetri,
so our stance is give it to the people who do the work to make them more efficient.
thank you so much. Demetri, what are you seeing? What are you seeing as a member, as an organizer, as rank and file?
Yeah, I think so. Our situation in SAG-AFTRA is so unique that we cannot stop the tide of a new technology, especially one that is like this. Um, it's inherently going to affect our uh, work hours, the amount of work that human actors get. But we can use this technology to, instead of just have it run, like Zeke is saying, the executives just want to use this technology to replace people, and that's it. Now, with our union, with our collective bargaining, what we're looking to do is capture this technology and make it somewhat or as beneficial as we can for our members as possible. So theoretically, you could say that I am booked already on one show, right? But I get hired to do voiceover on something else. Now, in a pre-AI world, I couldn't be two places at once. But with AI protections and a union contract backing this technology, I could theoretically be on a show in person while my voice is being used to record something else, and I'm getting money for both of those things, you know. And it's very important that we are involved in that process. Otherwise, we are definitely, as opposed to this tool being used to chop wood, it's going to be used to chop our heads off, you know. So that's basically the difference, is that we need to put that handle in our hands and control our destiny with this technology. My other thing too is like, it's so strange to me how AI, it's funny we bring this up about, there's so much sci-fi written that's like, this is the dangers of artificial intelligence. And so what do? We're like completely ignore all of these cautionary tales written by some of the smartest, best, writers, and and uh, and these executives just go forth and say, okay, well, let's do that. Let's make Skynet. You know what I'm saying? So, um, yeah. So, yeah.
What was there a time before AI though, like in this industry? As in, like, was there a time when you got into voiceover acting for video games, and you're like, man, I'm killing it. I'm making money because this is how it is. This is how I started. And now with AI coming into your turf, so to speak, was there a time before? Was it different back then when you just started?
No. Um, the TV theatrical world has been around for many decades. The video game world is like the new kid on the block, and it is very technology based. What we see is like, everybody was excited for all the tech and performance capture that was in the Marvel movies. Well, that stuff was in video games 5 to 6 years before it ever migrated to film.
Mm.
And I say, with the exception of like Avatar type stuff, the technology that you'll see in films in the future is all coming from video games. But it is a very immature space. The contracts in there have only been around since the early 90s instead of since the 40s. And so video games is not really a place where a person can make a living right now. Um, I could probably count on one hand the number of video game actors who could make a full-time living just doing that. Everyone works across the board. I mean, I work entirely across the board, but I don't know anybody that works just in video games. Everyone makes their money in commercials, promos, audiobooks, whatever they can get their hands on, because video games is a passion and people do it because they love it. It actually doesn't pay any money. There are no secondary payment options that are worth anything. There's no things like residuals or usage payments for video games. So you basically get paid a session payment for the day of work that you do. And the average video game performer does a small handful of days every year, and that's it. So that's why most of them don't make qualifying healthcare, because it's really, really difficult to make what would amount to, with taxes, probably 40 days a year on a video game. That's really rare air. Because it's what, 27,000, something like that, Demetri, to qualify for healthcare at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Around 27,000. So that means that Every year we need to make that amount of money in order to qualify for our health care. And when we say that 87% of our members are not on health care, that's the truth. There's an old joke that's like, oh, you're an actor at what restaurant? And it's
Oh.
and so many members, actually myself included, fully transparent. I'm not making my healthcare this year, because from strikes and COVID, as the industry has been very, very wonky, and I'm having to put my talents into all of the other contracts that we have as well. So because that's like Zeke's saying, that's the only way to make a living, is that you have to work every contract. You can't really rely on one. Some make more than the others, but yeah.
I'll go first.
Yeah, well, I just be back on the healthcare issue. Um, we're in a mental health crisis. There's so much going on in the world, but when I talk about how, I don't know if I'm being oversimplistic. You guys can tell me, but if they are able to do the job faster and easier, some of that time that you should benefit from, I'm thinking maybe you should not have to qualify. You shouldn't have to work as much for healthcare qualifications. What's the salary to qualify, or what's the
27.
$27,000
so?
in a year.
I mean, for me, I'd be like, hey, okay, well, let's make it zero.
Well, it's unfortunately, because the health plans are run by a sort of a separate organization from the union, they're beholden to sort of market effects.
Mm.
And so what happened during the pandemic was, people were getting sick, a lot more money was coming out of the health plans, and no one was working, so no money was going into the health plans. And, under labor law, once the reserve hits a certain level, the government starts to step in. And so the trustees that manage that health plan have to make economic adjustments to ensure that the health plan is still viable. And the way that they do that is they raise the qualifying amount, or they decrease the amount of benefits that come out. So that's a horrible numbers decision that people have to make that has a real impact on the health and lives of human beings. But because of the society that we live in, where we don't have universal health care, unless you're in the military, by the way, and healthcare is a for-profit system, we're sort of stuck in that. The only way that I see out of it, the quickest way that I see out of it, is to capture more work within the union so that more money is pouring into the health plan. The more money pouring into the health plan, the lower that number can be.
Yeah.
And an interesting statistic to know is that globally, video game revenue is more than global theatrical revenue and North American sports combined.
Whoa.
The estimates vary, but video games bring in somewhere between 200 billion and 347 billion annually. Those are from Statista and a couple other companies. Whereas global theatrical revenue in North American sports is around 180 billion. So there's all this money out there. None of that is going into the union coffers because video games is a largely non-union space. So one of my strategies and Demetri's strategies and what we're doing in organizing is getting more video game developers to understand that they can make their games union, making the process and the cost easier for them to do so. And as we gain ground there, it's natural grassroots organizing. More money pours into the health plan.
That's interesting because that's how we operate as well. We're a dispatch hall, as I was saying earlier, our local, and we have a multi-employer healthcare fund. So if our member just works for one company, they're not going to qualify. But because we have multi-employer healthcare fund, then they work for a rock show one day, a theater another day, a convention the other day. But all these different corporations pitch into that one fund. During COVID, same thing happened to us. We were depleting our fund because there was no work, there was no money going into those coffers, and yeah, like our members that run the boards for that, their trustees, they had to make decisions along the way. Like, okay, we'll check it out. Like, we're gonna run out of this money eventually. We don't know when we're gonna bounce back. So they had to, before the pandemic, if you were a single member, healthcare was basically free, no co-pays. But now, because of the adjustments that we've made, now each member has to pay a little bit to have health care. But that's the idea too, is to organize as many companies here in San Diego, at least for us, to get them
Hmm.
into our healthcare plan because these members work at non-union venues, non-union companies as well. But some of them don't qualify for healthcare because they don't make enough with our unionized company. So it's very similar to what you guys are going through over there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask about the strikes. So if 80 something percent of you guys don't make enough to qualify for your health care, and then the strikes last year kind of affected some of it, and you guys are still on strike right now, like what's the vibe out there with your membership? Is it that diehard that they're like, I didn't even qualify for healthcare, what do I got to lose kind of deal? Or like, because um if you were if here in San Diego, I feel like we don't have that as much as you guys have it up there. But if a strike already affected you that much, most of us don't have health care, and you're still gonna jump on strike. Is there what's the thought process behind that? Like, I'm just interested to know. Like, you guys are gun ho.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of that is that we are not, we're only on strike right now for one contract, and that's our IMA, the interactive media, aka video games. So there are certain companies which we cannot work who haven't signed our IMA. Those are the companies that we're on strike against. Before it was TV and theatrical, that's our big, one of the two biggest contracts that we have. Um, so you can work other contracts while we're on strike. So I can still work the commercials contract. Right now I can work TV and film, but I can't work certain video game contracts. Um, I'll say that the a lot of members are definitely hurting. You know what I'm saying? Many, many of us, and that's across our entire industry. I think broadly that's across most industries in America right now with inflation and everything else. Um, but our strikes did something so incredible last year, which was really like make our solidarity real. It opened up chances for us to build networks and structures with each other. And in our industry, we don't get to do that. It's very rare that you're working with another member for an extended period of time and you have those opportunities to chat with them about, what's going on with the union, the contract, what can they do to help. That opportunities like that are very slim in our industry. But, and I was a strike captain over at Disney Studios for the entire 118 days. Every single day, I was talking to members in a way that I could never do just from auditioning and going to work and doing my best on social media. Um, so I think we are in some ways, our solidarity, our ability to organize is at a high point, and I think that is what's getting a lot of us out there um, to see each other. A lot of us now know each other. I met Zeke through the strike last year. I've met so many wonderful, great people who will be my friends for the rest of my life, and it's just incredible to see that aspect is carried on into the IMA strike. So you have so many people. Look, I don't work a lot of video games, but I consider this my contract as well. You know what I'm saying? This is my union, and all of our contracts belong to all of us members. So I think you do have that feeling, but for sure, you talk to people, and the second you bring up healthcare, you're going to get a lot of opinions from members and a lot of pain and grief for people who are experiencing difficulty with those things. So,
I think you're talking exactly right. You're talking about solidarity. It's like you met Zeke, we met you, and now you're on the hottest labor podcast in California.
that's
Self
right,
proclaimed.
baby.
Self
That's
proclaimed.
right, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my 2 cents on that is, look, our employers love to push the narrative that actors are hurting each other by stopping work. When in reality, if the employer just signed the reasonable agreement, everyone would keep working. Now, we all know that strikes are designed to disrupt work, right? But this particular strike within this particular industry is designed to disrupt work, but only for the bad guys. We've set it up so we're not stopping work for the good guys, which means that our performers actually still can make money even in video games. Now, like we said before, we have to diversify because there is no way to make a full-time living in video games anyway. So what we're really telling people is continue your body of work, but only work these certain video games until these other people know. The way that we do that is we use interim agreements. So what the bargaining conditions the proposals that we have on the table right now with AI protections, once we went on strike, we offered that out as its own contract. And we have seen video game companies, I guess 2 weeks in, I don't know what the numbers are right now, but 2 weeks in, we had about 45 companies who had agreed to the entire proposal that we had on the table with AI protections. And so those companies were greenlit under the interim to continue to make video games. So there's lots of money out there still to be made by our workers, and allowing the good video game companies that will protect us to make money over their competitors and only striking the people that are trying to hold off and bully us is going to increase the leverage on them to bring them over. That's the generic or the general strategy of this strike, and that's what worked in TV and film, and so that's what we're doing here in video games.
Well, that's awesome. You guys are gangsters over there. Holy cow. You're like, you got this leveraging power that I've never seen before. Because, I was on strike in 2003, 2004 for 4.5 months. The grocery workers, Vaughn's, Ralph's, Albertsons back in the day. You probably remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's where we work, just that store. But you're able to say, okay, you just throw that contract out and say, if you guys want to take this contract. And they did. 45 people. That's pretty incredible. When that first happened, when you put out that proposal like that, did you expect that?
No, it's way better than we had hoped. But I mean, we knew that what we were asking for was reasonable.
Yeah.
Because everyone's looking at when we put it's a very complicated topic, but when we try to simplify it for people and put it on paper and go, this is what we're asking for, transparency to see how you're using it, consent so that you are not, saying racist or political things without us knowing with our face and voice, and the ability to be paid a fair wage tied to what is already scale within our contracts. And people go, yeah, that's completely reasonable. Why aren't they doing that? And we go, ask them, bro. So, once we went on strike and people were told, no, you can't work unless you sign this. And they look at it and go, well, I'll sign that. And so they've been doing that. And it's happened at, we thought it was reasonable, but it has proven to be, completely reasonable to most of the video game developers out there, except for a few of the heavyweights up top. And so we're gathering steam, and we're creating places for our people to work safely within the strike and leveraging that against the guys who are trying to be bad and take away all of our stuff.
I can't tell you how excited we are to have you on this podcast, because these things that people don't know. When they think of SAG-AFTRA, they think of actors, but they don't think of all the nuances and the different things that are going on. So thank you for laying that out. I had no idea until you came on the show.
There's an interesting nuance about what we do, and Demetri can probably speak to this too. It makes something like interim agreements easier, but it makes organizing devilishly hard. And that is that we don't have a work site. There's no way to put a steward in a place, because we move from show to show to film to video game to audiobook. There is no one place where I work. I get somewhere between 35 and 70 W-2s at the end of the year. And because there's no one concrete workplace, there is nowhere to go organize. We work in silos. And in video games, everything is NDA'd. So I will see a game come out that I know I've been working on for the last 4 years, and I'll be sitting next to my buddy and go, oh, wait, we're in that game together? Oh, we're scene partners through most of the game? I had no idea you were even on it, bro. So to be able to organize the workplace and I'll let Demetri speak to this, it's just really tough, man.
Yeah, it is. It's like honestly one of our, if not our biggest challenge in member-to-member organizing is that, like Zeke's saying, we don't have traditional workplaces. We don't have like structured workplaces. Most folks are in factories, they're in stores, they're on campuses. I'm lucky if I get to see my peers, at an audition. So, but what we are doing now, and this has all been generated out of our 23 strike, is that we're creating structures. And that's especially one of my biggest campaigns, is that we need to, as many committees as we have and as many whatever members are doing, we need to create places where our members can get together, talk to one another, talk to staff members, because we have a wonderful staff of incredible organizers and and some of the smartest folks you'll ever meet, about contracts. And so we're like having to build our structures first, and then we can really, I think, get into this what is considered like traditional organizing. But right now we're just working on the very basics. Let's talk to each other. Let's see what's going on with you. What can you tell me about the contract that you predominantly work? What's going on with your healthcare, and how can we as members, coalesce and use our power, our voice to, increase our leverage in our upcoming contracts. So.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. Like, I'm the organizer here with IATI 122, and it's organizing is tough to begin with. And we have work sites. Yeah, sure, we have a lot of different employers, a lot of different companies, but we have work sites, and these guys work with each other. So we have a centralized location for the most part. But you guys are definitely the original gig workers, like just hired
Right.
guns everywhere, and that must be really tough. But I think that success that you guys had last year with the strike, it did build that infrastructure to where, and that momentum too, to go into this fight. Like, you guys got that victory. Now let's get this victory to get the next victory that you were talking about.
Well,
So,
and we also have to consider too that nationally we have about 160,000 members, and just in LA local we have 80,000 members. Most of those members, the extent of their knowledge of being a union person is that they have a SAG card. They had to join.
mhm.
Um, so that is another hurdle that we're jumping right now, is getting our membership, especially for me, our members in Los Angeles, to really focus on the fact that they are union members and that they can act as good union members, to think like organizers, that the more that our membership is educated, mobilized, and activated, I mean, our power will be much more, well, it'll be unstoppable if we can really get it. But 80,000 members just here. So we're not looking at organizing all 80,000 members. Now, we had a great strike authorization vote before the 23 strike, which we saw about half of our membership vote 98% for a strike authorization. So that's like, again, the beginning of this incredible wave of solidarity that we're experiencing within our membership. But that's something that needs to be able to be replicated for all of our actions. And it was actually for our video game contract as well. We did a strike authorization, which was very successful, and showed that we were all united in the idea that we can and will strike for a better contract. So, but yeah, I would love to get 3% of LA members to be mobilized, organized, know where they can plug in and how they can help advance our goals. Because that would be 2,400 people just right there. But obviously, growing that and growing that will be one of our big challenges.
I think cross pollination. I think that's what we're doing right now on this podcast. Just supporting each other on social media, sharing each other. I'm a member of UFCW Local 135, but I'm wearing Justice for Janitor shirt. And there has to be
Oh,
there you go.
nice. RWU.
See, and that's it. And I think the labor movement, the cross pollination that's going on right now has never been seen before. I think we just got to keep our foot on the gas. We can't. Yeah, go ahead.
We saw an amazing rally for tag. It was last weekend. Adam Conover and a bunch of the WGA folks came out. A bunch of the SAG-AFTRA folks are out there for the Animation Guild, and we're all just sort of piling in together. And particularly in video games, just this year, we have seen the first wall-to-wall unions at Activision Blizzard and Bethesda, which are two of the major companies that make video games. And video games are notoriously non-union.
Mhm.
They do this thing called crunch, where 6 months before the game comes out, the workers are working 20 hours a day and sleeping at their desks, and they're miserable and it's horrible and they're just completely abused. But seeing the surge of the labor movement and seeing all of the strikes and seeing, the workers, the auto workers get the pay raise that they really needed, seeing the airline workers shut shit down, seeing all this stuff happen has made the game developers look around and go, why not us? And I think more of the labor force needs to look around and go, why not us? And realize that the power that they have is collective. It's the only power that you have, the ability to collectively stop the work And once people realize that and really just buy into that, it's all goodness. I mean, we're going to see some amazing things. I don't think it's going to slow down.
And you guys, I think when in campaigns, when I have campaigns here, and I try to educate the community, and everybody on what these AV companies are, it's hard to explain. It's hard to break it down for people to digest what we are, because we're behind the scenes. You're behind the scenes too if you're a voiceover actor.
Yeah.
But what SAG has is you guys have celebrities that can put spotlights on these issues that no one else really can't. Everybody has seen these big old movies and these big old plays, these big old video games. So, do you all have a lot of support from like big names that come out and retweet you all? I mean, the SAG strike last year, I did see a lot of celebrities out there on the picket line, so that was good. Does that help a lot of the time? Does that hurt maybe a little bit? Do they cross the picket line?
I wouldn't say they cross the picket line. The difficulty that we have in our particular union is when you hit a certain point of leverage where your name has money attached to it, you no longer need the minimum protections of the union. You have your own legal team, you have high-powered agents, they take care of that for you. The other piece is because nobody makes money as an actor, almost every actor realizes they have to get into production, which is why you start to see executive producer behind their name or producer behind their name. That's where actors really make money. Movie stars make their money on production, not acting. And so now you have a dual-headed entity who is more incentivized to help the production side than the actor side. So that's tough. But they are there. And once we educate them on, very few people want to see a movie with just you in it. They have to bring the rest of us. And in order for the rest of us to actually be here, you sort of have to get on board and help us out. Once we educate those folks, we tend to get quite a bit of support from them. And what's interesting is because they have celebrity, that voice is really powerful. It reaches. The nice thing about acting and the performance arts being the canary in the coal mine for what is going to happen with AI is because if it was just hidden away, like we're starting to see issues with the nurses, right? They're trying to replace pre-op nurses doing questionnaires with chatbots. So on the worst day of your life when you're going into the hospital, instead of seeing a human first, you see a robot. That can happen quietly on the side. When you start to attack the famous faces that you see on TV, and SAG-AFTRA represents broadcasters, your morning news people are under threat. Your favorite celebrities are under threat. And when they say that, everyone listens. So, it's sort of a double-edged sword for us.
Yeah, the solidarity, I say in the labor movement, we're a pride alliance. And I say the pride will eat, but how much is ultimately up to us. So, sticking together and, the cross-pollination I talked about earlier, but man, I just didn't know all this stuff. This is just, I feel a little excited right now. I really like I like knowing that you're on strike, but yet you can work in other areas. And that gives me peace of mind and gives me even more confidence in in the resolution. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, the cross-pollination is key. Like I learned, I think it was 2 years ago, I started going to the California Fed and those meetings. That's how we learned to strike. We talked to the TSA folks. There was a couple panels on how to successfully prepare for a strike when you're not on a strike so that your threat is so valid that you won't actually have to walk out. We learned mountains from that because SAG-AFTRA hasn't struck in a long time. So yeah, that cross-pollination for us is absolutely key.
Yeah, because not all of us are in a union, right? Like 90% of Americans are not in the union. 10% of the workforce is probably in the union, 1 out of 10 workers. So that's what it's all about is like us, like Chris likes to say, we're 2 degrees or 3 degrees of separation. So by us spreading the word, maybe it'll get that person to share it and then that other person, and then that'll create the right pressure point for you all to win. Or I don't know, I'm not saying that it's going to be us, but what I'm saying is that the only way to get the word out and build real support is by everybody sharing. I like to say sharing is solidarity. Solidarity isn't just being on the picket line, but it's being there for each other at home too, opening the door for each other. We are the community. We're the workers. Any other last words before we end this? I know or how do people support you all? Is there like a website? Do you all have a strike fund? How do you guys ask for support, and how do we support?
So,
Uh,
oh,
yeah, take
go ahead, Dimitri.
Okay, I was going to say, well, we do have something called the Entertainment Community Fund, which is, I'm not sure that, Zeke, do you know, does SAG-AFTRA have an actual strike fund, or is it all run through the community fund?
It's all run
Okay.
through the fund and the foundation and other places.
Yeah, so we have some, they're associated with our union, but I don't think they're technically a part of it. But during our 23 strike, when you kept hearing about The Rock is donating $1 million, Steven Spielberg is donating $1 million, those were the funds that they were supporting. So that's the Entertainment Community Fund, and that's accessible by not just SAG-AFTRA members, but a lot of different unions can access that as well. I used it. It was a huge, massive help to me during the strike. It helped me get through an extra few months of paying my rent and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's one way. Also, just share, talk about it. If you learn about, anything that Zeke and I are talking about, if you play video games, a huge part of this strike specifically, and Zeke can talk to you more about this, is the support that we get from the consumers and the players of the video games, So Zeke, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I mean, look, video games are popular because of the characters in them, and people play them because they fall in love with the characters in them. Those characters are created in collaboration with people. It's not just the actor; it's the actor, the animator, the writer, the mocap tech, all of the people that put together these amazing characters, and people are bought in. And the concept of recasting those characters or replacing that human character with a chat bot, the consumers have been pretty clear so far that they're not interested in playing those kind of games. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. When the minimum viable product needs to be good enough that it has the humanity behind it, which we believe it should, then we can't lose. Um, the best way that I think people can help us is get educated, stand in solidarity, and advocate for our cause because it's your cause. The places that you can find information are, we have a specific video game strike website. It's sagaftra.org/video game strike. That's the official union outlet with FAQs and contracts and the latest news. And then there are some really good third-party places where you can go to get information that is sort of translated for the layperson. One of them is the National Association of Voice Actors, NAVA, their social media feeds. And another one is a grassroots group called Game Performance Matters. So the Game Performance Matters all together, social feeds put sort of interesting educational videos out about what is a game? What is our contract? How is the work done? What is performance capture? What is vocally stressful work? All these things that people don't know that we do, and help to give a better understanding of why this is so important and what happens if we win and what happens if we lose.
Okay. Anything else, Chris?
Well, on that, I think that's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I know you guys were on strike. You're busy. I see you doing interviews. You guys have a lot of good social media content out there. I try to share as much of it as I could. We do. All we do is share. And I love the content that you all are creating. And
Same to you guys. I think this podcast is incredible. I think we need more stuff like this. I was just watching the
Heck
one
yeah.
with, and I can't watch her without crying. And so I think this
which
is
one?
a great resource. The one with Sarah Nelson.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I just think it's a great resource for union people who are stoked about organizing or members who want to get into organizing. Like, this is such a great resource to be able to just put on a podcast and do your thing for an hour and just learn how to build solidarity with your workers. It's really, really great stuff, guys.
Okay. This might not make it on the podcast, but what do you all think about starting a labor party? Like, me and Chris are huge advocates of this idea, everything that's going on in the country. We feel like what better time than now? Even if you don't win the presidency or Congress or the Senate, I feel like having options is key because that's
Having an
pressure.
option outside of the two-party system, I mean, it could only help, especially one that is focused on labor organizing,
Mm-hmm.
actual rank and file power, and building, making look, history's cyclical, right? So it's like you look at the 1920s where labor was at then, it was building a lot of momentum. And then come the 1940s, there's nothing that the executive branch could do except for create the New Deal, right? And that was in response to a strong labor organizing force. And not only that, but there was people being elected in places like Minnesota who were not Democrats or Republicans, who were very much pro working people who had really great politics that were benefiting the average person. And so I think that could only help in the next few decades for sure. Something like a Labor Party, a legitimate worker led and run party for sure.
Well, there you have it. I told Sean Fain that once we started, we're going to draft him. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I think the labor movement were the true rainbow coalition.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, Green Party, whatever, no party, independent. Everyone deserves a union. And that I'm stealing Juan's line right now.
Yeah, I coined it. But, all right, everybody. Well, thank you all for joining us. And that's another episode of Union or Bust. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to our podcast. Hit that Patreon link too. Subscribe. It's only $5 a month. Come on, don't be cheap. We need the money. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But thank you.
Solidarity, y'all. Yeah. Thank you.
But thank you all for joining us now, and we'll stay in touch.